The crystalline research vessel Serenity drifted through the void like a wounded bird, its beautiful translucent hull now spiderwebbed with cracks that leaked precious atmosphere into the cold darkness of space. Captain Kevil pressed his 4 slender arms against the command console, his pale blue skin trembling as he watched the nightmare unfold before them. Through the main viewport, asteroids that had once housed thriving mining colonies now burned with the orange glow of destruction. The Korthek raiders moved like hungry predators through the debris field, their massive black warships bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Each vessel was easily 3 times the size of any Zephyrian craft, built for one purpose, to take what they wanted and destroy what they couldn't steal. "Captain, we're losing atmosphere on decks 4 and 5, reported Science Officer Ilani, her voice barely above a whisper. Her normally graceful movements were jerky with fear as she worked frantically at her station. "The hull breach is spreading. We have maybe 20 minutes before the ship becomes uninhabitable." Kevil watched helplessly as another Korthak destroyer unleashed its weapons on the Kepler mining station. The facility had housed over 3,000 miners and their families just hours ago. Now it was nothing but expanding gas and twisted metal, another victim of the raiders' endless hunger for resources. The Korthaks were unlike any species the peaceful Zephyrians had ever encountered. Where most galactic civilizations valued trade and cooperation, these creatures lived only to conquer and consume. Their ships looked like mechanical beasts, all sharp angles and predatory design. Even their smaller fighters moved through space with a vicious grace that spoke of countless battles and victories. "How many ships do we count?" Kevil asked, though he dreaded the answer. 30 confirmed vessels, sir," replied Navigation Officer Thex, his young voice cracking with terror. 3 battleships, 12 destroyers, and 15 fighters. They are not just raiding, Captain. They are systematically strip-mining everything in this sector. Kevil's heart sank. The Zephyrian Confederation had exactly 0 military vessels. Their entire philosophy was built around peace, exploration, and scientific discovery. Their ships were designed for research and trade, not war. The Serenity itself carried nothing more dangerous than emergency signal flares and some mining lasers that couldn't even scratch a Korthak fighter's armor. On the tactical display, red dots swarmed around the asteroid belt like deadly insects. Each dot represented a Korthak ship, loaded with enough firepower to level a city. They moved with military precision, following attack patterns that had been perfected over centuries of conquest. "Sir, they're targeting the residential habitats now," Yolani reported, her voice breaking. "The civilian transports are trying to evacuate, but the raiders are hunting them down like sport." Through the viewport, Kevil could see the fleeing civilian ships. Tiny dots of light desperately trying to escape the killing ground, only to be picked off one by Korthak fighters. Each flash of weapons fire meant families destroyed, lives ended, dreams shattered. The Zephyrians had always believed that intelligence and goodwill could solve any problem. They had spent centuries building trade relationships and sharing technology with dozens of species across the galaxy. Never had they imagined that someday they would face an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, bought off, or convinced to find a peaceful solution. "Captain, incoming transmission from the lead Korthak vessel," Communications Officer Wren announced, his tentacles shaking as he worked his console. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the nightmare face of a Korthak war leader. The creature's skull was elongated and scarred, with rows of razor-sharp teeth and eyes that glowed like red coals. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. "Zephyrian vessel, you will surrender your ship and cargo immediately. Your crew will be processed for slave labor. Resistance will result in immediate destruction." Kevil straightened his spine, finding courage he didn't know he possessed. "This is Captain Kevil of the research vessel Serenity. We are a peaceful science mission. We have no military value to you." The Korthak leader's laugh was like breaking glass. "Everything is value, little prey. Your crystalline hull will make excellent armor plating. Your crew will work our mines until they die. You have 60 seconds to comply." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Around them, the ship groaned as the hull breach continued to spread. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and the air tasted of fear and desperation. "Send the distress beacon on all frequencies," Kevil ordered, his forearms trembling but his voice steady. Anyone must help us. Broadcast our coordinates. Warn them about the Korthak fleet. and tell them we have civilians who need immediate evacuation. Ren's tentacles flew over his controls. Beacon transmitted. Captain. Full spectrum broadcast across all known communication channels. The message pulsed out into the darkness, coordinates, a desperate plea for aid, and warnings about 30 Korthak vessels spreading destruction through the sector. It carried the hope of a dying ship and the prayers of a peaceful people who had never learned to fight. The Korthak fleet continued their methodical destruction, confident that no species in this remote sector possessed the military strength to challenge them. They had conquered hundreds of systems using the same brutal tactics, and never once had their victims found help. But somewhere in the vast galaxy, the message was traveling toward a species that the Korthaks had only heard about in whispered rumors. A species forged by a world so hostile that survival itself had made them into something the galaxy both feared and misunderstood. The Zephyrians could only pray that somewhere in the darkness, someone would answer their call before it was too late. Deep in Terran space, 3 light-years from the Sol system, Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the command bridge of the mighty battle cruiser Defiant. The ship was a testament to human engineering, 2 kilometers of reinforced titanium and composite armor, bristling with enough firepower to crack moons. Its angular hull design spoke of a species that had learned warfare the hard way, through centuries of conflict on a world that never gave them a moment's peace. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as the night shift monitored long-range sensors and communication arrays. Then, cutting through the routine chatter of deep space patrol, came something extraordinary, an alien distress signal bleeding through subspace on multiple frequencies. "Admiral, we're picking up an unknown transmission," called out Lieutenant Tyler Brooks from the communication station. His young face was illuminated by the blue glow of his screens as he worked to clean up the signal. "It's not coming from any human colony or ship." Morrison moved to the central command platform, his weathered face showing the kind of calm that only came from 3 decades of military service. At 55, he had served in the border wars, survived the Titan Rebellion, and commanded fleets and battles that most civilians never even knew had happened. "Put it through the translation matrix," Morrison ordered, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The ship's quantum computer began working on the alien language, its processing power equivalent to every computer that had existed on Earth before the year 2100. Slowly, word began forming on the main display, though the translation software struggled with concept that had no human equivalent. Lieutenant Rachel Stone at the tactical station pulled up the sensor data, her green eyes widening as she processed the information. "So, the signal is coming from the Kepler sector, approximately 4 to 7 light-years from our current position. According to the transmission, there are 30 hostile vessels attacking civilian targets." Morrison studied the data streaming across the holographic display. The alien ship sending the message was called the Serenity, apparently a research vessel from something called the Zephyrian Confederation. The attackers were identified as Korthaks, a name that made several bridge officers exchange worried glances. "Korthaks," muttered Chief Petty Officer Blake Harrison from the weapons control station. "I've heard rumors about them from the outer colonies. Slavers, pirates, and killers. They've been spreading through the outer rim like plague." The translation AI finally managed to decode the full message, and the bridge fell silent as a desperate plea echoed through the speakers. It was unmistakably a call for help from beings who had never imagined they would face such brutality. The fear in the alien captain's voice transcended species barriers. Morrison's jaw tightened as he read the tactical assessment. 30 Korthak warships against what appeared to be defenseless civilians. The alien sending the distress call had no weapons, no military ships, nothing but the hope that someone in the vast galaxy might care enough to help. "Additional data coming through," reported Lieutenant Brooks, his voice tense with excitement. "The attacking force includes 3 battleships and multiple destroyer-class vessels. The aliens are describing systematic destruction of mining colonies and civilian habitats." Lieutenant Stone's fingers danced over her tactical console, pulling up everything the human military database contained about Korthak ship designs and battle tactics. "Admiral, according to our intelligence files, Korthak vessels are heavily armed but poorly shielded. They rely on intimidation and overwhelming firepower against weaker opponents. Most galactic species surrender rather than fight them." Morrison nodded grimly. Most species in the galaxy had evolved on gentler worlds than Earth. They had developed technology and civilization without the constant threat of extinction that had shaped humanity. Wars, for them, were political disagreements solved through negotiation. They had no concept of the kind of total warfare that Earth had perfected through millennia of survival. Humans were different. Earth had tried to kill them with ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, predators, and 1,000 other disasters. They had evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions that would destroy other species. When humanity finally reached the stars, they brought with them the hard-won knowledge that sometimes violence was the only language that bullies understood. "So," called out Communications Officer Lisa Parker from her station, "we're receiving similar distress calls from other ships in the area. It looks like the Cortex are conducting a full-scale raid on the entire sector. Civilian casualties are mounting." Morrison studied the holographic star map, showing the Kepler sector. Red markers indicated confirmed Cortex positions, while blue dots represented civilian ships desperately trying to escape. It was a massacre in slow motion, playing out across several light years of space. The Admiral thought about the recent reports from human intelligence. The Cortex had been growing bolder, pushing closer to human-protected space. They had tested the waters by raiding undefended colonies and attacking lone merchant vessels. Each success had made them more confident, more willing to take risks. But they had made one crucial miscalculation. They assumed that humans were like every other species in the galaxy, civilized, peaceful, unwilling to commit to the kind of warfare that left entire fleets burning in the void. "Signal the 7th Fleet," Morrison commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. "Full deployment. All ships are to prepare for immediate hyperspace jump to the Kepler sector." Around the bridge, officers began implementing combat protocols that had been refined through decades of human military experience. Weapons systems came online. Shields were charged to maximum capacity, and fighter squadrons began pre-flight preparations. Chief Harrison grinned as he watched his tactical displays light up with targeting solutions. "Admiral, the fleet reports ready for deployment. 15 ships total, including 3 battleships and the carrier Intrepid with her full fighter wing." Morrison nodded, watching as his fleet of warships prepared to demonstrate why the galaxy whispered fearfully about humans. The Cortex thought they were apex predators, but they were about to learn that Earth had produced something far more dangerous. "These pirates just made a very poor choice," Morrison said quietly, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Let's show them what happens when Deathworlders decide to solve a problem." Within hours, 15 human warships prepared to tear through hyperspace toward a battle that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Reality tore open like a wound in space itself as 15 human warships materialized at the edge of the Kepler system. The hyperspace jump created brilliant flashes of blue-white light that painted the asteroid field in an otherworldly glow. Where most alien vessels emerged from hyperspace with gentle transitions, the human fleet burst through like predators breaking cover. The ships themselves were nothing like the organic curves and graceful designs favored by most galactic civilizations. These were weapons of war, built by a species that had learned the hard way that survival meant being ready to fight at any moment. The lead vessel, Admiral Morrison's battlecruiser Defiant, stretched 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its angular hull bristling with weapons arrays, sensor clusters, and armor plating thick enough to withstand planetary bombardment. Captain Kevel, still trapped aboard the dying Serenity, pressed his 4 arms against the cracked viewport as he watched the newcomers deploy. His species had never seen military vessels like these. Where Zephyrian ships were built for research and beauty, these human warships were designed with only one purpose in mind: to dominate any battlefield they entered. "By the 7 moons," whispered Science Officer Yolani, her pale blue skin growing even paler. "Those ships, they look like mechanical predators." The human fleet moved with a precision that defied belief. Each vessel took its assigned position in a battle formation that had been perfected through centuries of warfare. The smaller destroyers spread out in a protective screen while the massive battleships positioned themselves for maximum weapon coverage. Fighter squadrons poured from the carrier Intrepid like angry hornets, their sleek forms darting between the larger ships with impossible agility. What amazed Captain Kevel most was the speed of their deployment. Within minutes of arriving, the entire human fleet had assumed a combat formation that would have taken most species hours to coordinate. These beings moved like they had been born for war. Aboard the Defiant, Admiral Morrison stood on his command bridge, studying the tactical display that showed 30 Korthak vessels spread across the asteroid field. The raiders had been caught completely off guard by the sudden appearance of the human fleet. Their ships were scattered, some still in the process of stripping valuable minerals from destroyed mining stations. "Full sensor sweep," Morrison ordered, his voice calm despite the enormity of what they were about to attempt. "I want to know the exact position and capability of every Korthak vessel in this system." Lieutenant Tyler Brooks worked frantically at his station, the ship's advanced sensors penetrating the debris field and cataloging each enemy ship. "Admiral, confirm count of 30 vessels. 3 battleships, 12 destroyers, and 15 fighters. They are regrouping now, forming up around their command ship." On the main screen, the Korthak fleet was indeed pulling back from their raiding positions. Their ships looked like mechanical nightmares, all sharp spines and weapon ports, designed to inspire terror in their victims. But Morrison had fought worse things in the Outer Rim, and he knew that ships built for intimidation were often weaker than they appeared. "So," called out Communications Officer Lisa Parker, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from Korthak vessels. They are demanding to know our identity and ordering us to withdraw." Morrison's weathered face showed a thin smile. "Put me on all frequencies, Lieutenant. Time to introduce ourselves properly." The Admiral's voice boomed across every communication channel in the system, reaching not just the Korthaks but also the surviving Zephyrian vessels hiding among the asteroids. His words carried the authority of a species that had never backed down from a fight. "This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. You are attacking defenseless civilians in violation of every civilized law in the galaxy. Release your prisoners and withdraw immediately, or learn why our species survived the Deathworld." The response from the Korthak fleet was immediate and predictable. The lead battleship, a massive vessel bristling with plasma cannons and missile arrays, turned toward the human formation and opened fire. Streams of superheated energy lanced across space, aimed directly at the Defiant, but the human ship was already moving. With acceleration that would have crushed most alien crews under lethal G-forces, the battle cruiser rolled away from the incoming fire while simultaneously bringing its own weapons to bear. The maneuver was so sudden and violent that several Korthak gunners lost their target locks entirely. "That," said Lieutenant Tom Bradley of the weapons console, his fingers dancing over the firing controls, "was a mistake." Morrison nodded grimly. The Korthaks had just made the classic error that had doomed so many of humanity's enemies. They had assumed that humans fought like everyone else in the galaxy. They expected formal declarations, positioning for advantage, and careful tactical considerations. Instead, they were about to face an enemy that had learned warfare on a planet where hesitation meant death. Humans didn't fight fair. They fought to win, using every advantage their harsh homeworld had given them. "All ships, weapons free," Morrison commanded. "Show them what Deathworlders do to pirates." The human fleet erupted into motion like a pack of wolves attacking their prey. Each ship accelerated at rates that would have killed most alien crews, pulling maneuvers that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Fighter squadrons streaked through the asteroid field, their pilots pulling turns that generated forces exceeding anything most species could survive. The Korthaks had expected to face another civilized species that would fight according to established galactic norms. Instead, they found themselves confronting something their nightmares had never imagined, a military force forged by a world that had tried to kill its children for millions of years. Captain Kevel watched in stunned amazement as the human ships moved through space like living things, their crews somehow surviving accelerations that should have been impossible. These weren't just warriors. They were something evolution had crafted specifically for war. The battle for the Kepler system was about to begin, and the Korthaks were about to learn why the galaxy whispered fearfully about the species from Earth. The battle erupted across the Kepler system like a deadly storm of light and metal. Human ships moved through space with an agility that defied everything the Korthaks thought they knew about space combat. The destroyer Vanguard rolled through a barrage of plasma fire, its hull spinning like a dancer while its crew endured G-forces that would have liquefied most alien beings. Captain Reed Williams, commanding the Vanguard, felt his body pressed deep into his reinforced command chair as his ship pulled a 15G turn that brought them behind a Korthak destroyer. His crew, enhanced by generations of evolution on humanity's brutal homeworld, simply gritted their teeth and kept fighting. "Target acquired," called out Weapons Officer Jake Collins, his voice strained but steady despite the crushing forces. Firing kinetic penetrators. The human ship's railgun spoke with thunderous violence, launching tungsten rods at incredible velocity. The projectiles punched through the Korthak destroyer's shields like they were made of paper, tearing through armor and disabling engine systems without completely destroying the vessel. Across the battlefield, the same scene played out again and again. Human ships danced between asteroid chunks, using the debris field like a three-dimensional maze while their enemies struggled to keep up. The carrier Intrepid launched wave after wave of fighters, their pilots pulling maneuvers that would have killed any other species. Lieutenant Ben Foster piloted his fighter through a gap between two tumbling asteroids, barely 3 meters of clearance on either side. Behind him, a Korthak fighter tried to follow the same route and smashed into the rock face, its pilot unable to handle the precision flying required. "This is Fighter Squadron Alpha," Foster reported over the comm system, his voice calm despite flying at speeds that turn mistakes into instant death. "Enemy fighters are falling back. They can't match our maneuver capability." Aboard the Defiant, Admiral Morrison watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The battle was unfolding exactly as he had predicted. The Korthaks were used to fighting civilized species that approached warfare like a formal dance. They expected long-range exchanges, careful positioning, and gradual tactical advantages. Instead, they faced humans who treated space combat like a knife fight in a dark alley. "Admiral, Korthak command ship is attempting to withdraw," reported Lieutenant Tyler Brooks from his communication station. "They are trying to rally their remaining forces for a coordinated retreat." Morrison studied the enemy formation. The Korthaks were learning, but too slowly. Their command ship, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons, was already taking heavy damage from concentrated human fire. "Target their engines, disable when possible," Morrison ordered, his voice carrying across the bridge. "We're not monsters. Give them a chance to surrender." It was a crucial distinction that separated humans from the raiders they fought. Despite their fearsome reputation, humanity had never forgotten the difference between justice and cruelty. They fought to protect the innocent, not to satisfy some bloodthirsty urge for destruction. The battleship Thunder demonstrated this philosophy perfectly. Instead of destroying a crippled Korthak cruiser, Captain Diana Ross ordered precision strikes that disabled the ship's weapons and engines while leaving life support intact. The enemy crew would live, but their ship would never threaten civilians again. "Sir, multiple Korthak vessels are requesting terms to surrender," announced Communications Officer Lisa Parker. "They are offering to exchange prisoners and withdraw from the sector." Morrison nodded grimly. "Tell them to release all prisoners immediately and transmit coordinates for any civilian survivors. They have 10 minutes to comply before we resume firing." The response was immediate. Escape pods began launching from Korthak ships as they released captured Zephyrian civilians. The raiders had learned that humans meant exactly what they said. Within minutes, half the Korthak fleet was either disabled or destroyed, their wreckage floating among the asteroids like a monument to the price of preying on the innocent. The survivors, their command structure shattered and their confidence broken, began the desperate process of jumping to hyperspace. The last Korthak ship vanished in a flash of blue light. Their raiding days in this sector permanently ended. They would carry word back to their clans about the species that had shattered their fleet without breaking a sweat. As the battle smoke cleared, human rescue ships moved through the debris field, searching for survivors and providing aid to damaged civilian vessels. The destroyer Mercy deployed medical teams to assist wounded Zephyrians, while engineering crews worked to patch the holes in the research vessel Serenity. Captain Kevel stood on his bridge, watching in amazement as human marines in powered armor boarded his ship. The soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, their massive suits making them look like mechanical giants. But when the lead marine removed her helmet, revealing the face of Sergeant Beth Thompson, her expression was gentle and reassuring. "You're safe now," Sergeant Thompson said, her voice warm despite her intimidating armor. "We're here to help." The other marines spread through the ship, carrying medical supplies and emergency repair equipment. They worked with quiet professionalism, treating wounded Zephyrians with the same care they would show their own people. "I don't understand," Captain Kevel said, his forearms trembling with relief and confusion. "We heard terrible stories about your species. They called you Deathworlders, monsters from a nightmare planet." Sergeant Thompson smiled, checking the atmospheric readings on a damaged section of the ship. We are from a harsh world, that's true. But that's exactly why we understand what it means to need help. Earth taught us to be strong, but it also taught us to protect those who can't protect themselves. Around them, human medical teams worked alongside Zephyrian survivors, their advanced technology quickly stabilizing the wounded and repairing critical ship systems. The aliens watched in wonder as these supposedly terrifying warriors showed nothing but kindness and competence. The galaxy had whispered fearfully about humans for good reason. But today, those same qualities that made them dangerous to their enemies made them the perfect protectors for those who needed help. The Cortex had learned that Deathworlders were indeed something to fear, but only if you preyed on the innocent. Captain Kevel stepped carefully through the airlock connecting his damaged research vessel to the massive human battlecruiser Defiant. The transition felt like moving from a delicate crystal palace into the belly of a mechanical beast. Everything around him spoke of power and purpose, thick armor plating, weapon systems built into the very walls, and corridors wide enough to accommodate soldiers in powered armor. 2 human marines escorted him through the ship, their presence both protective and slightly intimidating. Kevel had never seen beings quite like these. Where his own species was tall and slender, evolved for grace and intellectual pursuits, these humans were compact and muscular, clearly built by a world that had demanded physical strength for survival. The ship's corridors bustled with activity as crew members conducted post-battle operations. Kevel watched in fascination as human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian technicians, sharing tools and knowledge as they repaired damaged systems throughout the small fleet of rescued civilian vessels. Captain Kevel called a warm voice behind him. He turned to see a human woman approaching, her uniform bearing the insignia of a medical officer. I'm Dr. Helen Grant, Chief Medical Officer. How are your people recovering from their injuries? Better than we had any right to expect, Kevel replied, his forearms gesturing in the Zephyrian sign of gratitude. Your medical technology is remarkable. My science officer said you heal bone fractures in minutes that would have taken our medicine weeks to repair. Dr. Grant smiled genuinely. We've had a lot of practice treating trauma injuries. Our homeworld wasn't gentle with us, so we learned to patch people up quickly. They continued through the ship until they reached the Admiral's ready room, a spacious chamber that managed to feel both military and welcoming. Admiral Morrison stood as they entered, gesturing toward a table that had been set with food from both human and Zephyrian cultures. Captain Kevel, please join me, Morrison said, his weathered face showing genuine warmth. I thought we should talk properly, now that the shooting has stopped. Kevel settled into a chair designed to accommodate his alien physiology, marveling at the thoughtfulness humans had shown in such small details. The meal before them included nutrient paste suitable for Zephyrian digestion alongside more robust human fare. Admiral, I must ask, Kevel began, his voice careful and diplomatic. Why did you risk your ships and crews for complete strangers? The Cortex had 30 vessels. Even with your superior technology, you could have suffered casualties. Morrison took a sip of coffee, his eyes distant for a moment. Captain, let me tell you something about Earth. Our homeworld spent millions of years trying to kill us. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, predators that hunted us for sport. We learned early that survival meant protecting the group, because alone, we all died. The Admiral stood and walked to a viewport showing the asteroid field where wreckage from the battle still drifted. We know what it's like to be prey, Captain. To face something bigger and stronger than yourself with no hope of victory. Our world taught us that survivors protect those who can't protect themselves. Kevel listened intently, beginning to understand something profound about these mysterious beings. But surely you must want something in return? Territory, resources, tribute. Morrison shook his head. We seek no conquest. Captain, we have everything we need in our own systems. But we won't tolerate predators hunting the innocent. It's that simple. As they spoke, news of the battle was already spreading through galactic communication networks at the speed of light. The quantum communication array aboard the Defiant transmitted detailed reports to Human Command, while surviving Zephyrian ships sent their own accounts to the Confederation Council. On the trade world of Nexus Prime, alien merchants gathered around news terminals, watching footage of the battle with growing amazement. The images showed human ships moving with impossible grace, their crews surviving maneuvers that should have been fatal. 30 Korthek vessels, whispered a Rigelian trader, his tentacles curling with nervous energy, and the humans destroyed half of them in minutes. Similar conversations were taking place across dozens of worlds as word spread through the galaxy's information networks. The Valdoran Parliament held emergency sessions to discuss the implications. The peaceful Centauri Federation began drafting diplomatic overtures to humanity. Even the militaristic hegemony took notice, their war councils analyzing the battle footage with professional interest. But perhaps the most significant reactions came from the galaxy's criminal elements. In hidden bases and pirate strongholds, raiders who had spent decades terrorizing civilian shipping began reconsidering their life choices. Captain Vex of the notorious Red Skull pirate stared at his tactical display, watching the same battle footage that was spreading across the galaxy. His crew had been planning a raid on the nearby Altarian trade routes, but now those plans seemed suicidal. Boss called his first mate, a scarred veteran of countless raids. Maybe we should consider that mining job in the Outer Rim. Regular pay, no risk of running into Deathworlders. Similar conversations were happening in criminal hideouts across the galaxy. Pirates suddenly found their hunting ground protected by a species that viewed warfare not as politics or profit, but as problem-solving. The equation was simple: attack civilians, face human intervention. Back aboard the Defiant, Captain Kevel raised a glass of synthesized Zephyrian wine and toast. Admiral Morrison, on behalf of the Zephyrian Confederation, I formally request an alliance with humanity. We offer our knowledge, our friendship, and our gratitude. Morrison smiled, raising his own glass. Captain, I think that's exactly what this galaxy needs. The alliance ceremony was broadcast across both civilizations, marking the beginning of something unprecedented. For the first time, a peaceful species had voluntarily allied with the mysterious Deathworlders from Earth. Across the galaxy, other peaceful civilizations watched and began to reconsider their assumptions. The Koran Unity started drafting trade proposals. The academic collective of Vega began planning cultural exchanges. Even species that had never ventured beyond their home systems began looking toward the stars with new hope. Perhaps having the galaxy's most dangerous species as friends wasn't terrifying after all. Perhaps it was exactly what the universe had been waiting for, protectors who asked for nothing except a chance to ensure that the strong could no longer prey upon the weak. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever, and for the first time in centuries, the innocent could sleep peacefully among the stars. The END,